Hey guys, it's Michael the DC Multiverse Collector bringing you a look at this Batman vs Superman 2-pack. Except it's Batman from the future and Superman from another universe. But look, we'll get to that. Let's check out the DC Multiverse Batman Beyond vs Justice Lord Superman 2-pack. Okay, we're back. Hi guys, it's Michael the DC Multiverse Collector bringing you a look at this Batman Beyond vs Justice Lord Superman 2-pack. Now this wasn't a 2-pack I was originally going to get, but circumstances conspired. I got a good deal and so I've got this 2-pack and I thought, look, let's review it. It's a couple of months late. I know you've mostly all seen this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this review. I'm just going to give you my quick thoughts. So here you can see we have Justice Lord Superman in his classic white, red and black outfit, looking very striking. We have Terry McGinnis Batman Beyond in his kryptonite batsuit, looking quite cool in the packaging, I've got to say. These are really striking designs for these characters, which is sort of what appealed to me when thinking about whether to get this set or not. For those of you who don't know, and look, I'm only cursorily familiar with this storyline, the Justice Lords are basically an alternate universe Justice League. They first appeared in the Justice League animated TV series, and I think from memory the basic idea is that in this alternate universe, Lex Luthor's president and he executes the Flash. And this pisses Superman off so much that that universe's Superman basically just heat visions Lex Luthor to death, and the Justice League become the Justice Lords, who are kind of these fascist rulers of Earth, totally dedicated to eradicating crime through fascism, through fear, and they obviously sort of become everything that they stood against, you know, they become the Justice Lords. And then my understanding is that Batman Beyond in his comic run, in a crossover event, actually took on the Justice Lords back in their own universe, or I don't know. But in any event, Terry McGinnis faces off against Justice Lord Superman, and he wears this awesome sort of kryptonite-infused batsuit to do it, hence this 2-pack. But without any further ado, let's look at the packaging. You see it's got the standard DC Multiverse logo. We have the Batman Beyond and Justice Lord Superman designation from Batman Beyond 2.0. And we have some awesome comic book artwork on the back. You'll see that Batman Beyond is not wearing his actual kryptonite costume. I assume that's for some sort of artist royalties or licensing reasons. And we've got Justice Lord Superman looking really awesome in that suit. So without any further ado, we've looked at the packaging. Before we open the box, if you like this video, please give it a like. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I've got lots of reviews. I've been reviewing like a madman lately, so please check those out. Also check out my top 10 of the year and subscriber giveaway video. That competition will close on December 31st, so please get your entries in. It's open to everyone. But without further ado, let's get this box open and see how cool this pack is. Okay, so with everything opened up, I've set the figures to one side so we can have a look at everything else that comes in the box. Let's start with the boring stuff. You get 2 standard DC Multiverse display stands. Sick of talking about them, you're bored of hearing about them, so let's move on. Next, we have the trading cards. Now, like I said before, Batman Beyond doesn't have his kryptonite costume on. I assume that's some sort of licensing or copyright issue, but it's still really, really nice art. Batman Beyond 2.0. There is Terry McGinnis' data file. You can pause if you want to have a read. More interesting is the Justice Lord Superman card, which has that great art on it. Really, really striking design. Love this design. It looks great in comic form. And here is Justice Lord Superman's data file if you want to pause that and learn a little bit more about the Batman Beyond 2.0 Justice Lords crossover story. Gives you sort of the premise of that, so we'll set that to one side. Next, we have alternate hands. Now these 2 hands here belong to Superman. They are these sort of gesture hands. They're very dramatic, nicely sculpted with the fingers all sort of gnarled. You can sort of see him speechifying or, you know, giving a grand monologue. These are from Eradicator. They're just a flesh-colored repaint of Eradicator's hands. Now, if you remember, Eradicator had sort of hands that look like he dipped them in Cheeto dust. I'll show you those later, but they're just a repaint. They're good hands to have. They're quite large though. And here you have Batman Beyond comes with 2 claw hands, sort of grippy, gestury claw hands from memory, and we'll do a comparison later. These are exactly the same Batman Beyond hands that came with the original Batman Beyond release, which came in a Build-A-Figure wave and a standalone pack, but we'll check that out in a minute. And we get 2 Batarangs. Now, from my understanding, these are unique Batarang designs. I have not seen them before, and they look pretty cool. Not bad at all. So they are what they are. Something new in this set, finally. Now, the display base. Most 2-packs in the DC Multiverse line, as we know, come with a display base, and they're usually just like quite a simple hollow sculpt with a bit of geometry for the figures to stand on, a couple of pegs. This looks like a portion of the Batcave, and I've sort of inferred that from one, the design, but also this insert that comes. Now, this is something new I've not seen in the 2-packs before. Basically, it comes with this cardboard 2-pack. It's on glossy paper. On one side, it has that really, really nice artwork, but on the other side, it has scenery, which looks like the Batcave from Batman Beyond. And this is what is interesting, is that the display base has a groove that you can insert this card to give some background depth. Now, to my knowledge, that is something new. So I quite like that. As a concept, I quite like it. My problem with it is that the art is maybe a little bit abstract. Like, it doesn't quite match the detail of the stand, and maybe it could be a little bit longer. It just feels like a really awkward size. Like, I just wish it came out just a little bit further. But conceptually, I quite like this. If you're going to display the figures on the stand, it'll look quite nice with that in the background. Of course, it has a tendency to sort of fall forwards, but that's not a big deal. So that is interesting. I'm going to set that to one side for a moment, though, so we can have a look at this base. Now, I think this is an all-unique base. I've not seen this before. It's always hard to tell with this McFarlane stuff because they repurpose molds and tweak them, but I think this might be unique. Please let me know in the comments if we've seen this base before, and if we have, where. I don't think we have. It looks similar to some we've seen before, but I think it might be new, so let me know. But it's kind of cast in this sort of reddy brown earthy plastic, and then there's some sort of metallic paint on all this sort of detail, which I presume is just parts of the Batcave where they are fighting. Overall, it's got really nice level of detail, a little bit of paint, which is nice, completely hollow underneath, and you'll see it's got a couple of pegs for the figures to stand on. I'll give you a look at what they look like in just a second. So here are the figures posed on the display base. Now, this might be a skill issue, but I always have trouble posing the figures on these display bases because I find that the display bases aren't quite deep enough to accommodate the figures fully posed, and I also struggle to sort of pose them in any way that's dynamic because they don't really have pegs for both feet. So you end up having to sort of awkwardly balance them on one peg, and I don't know, I can never find a way to make them look natural, and also the base is so small that the figures end up quite cramped and close together. People with skill will make this look good. I can't really do that. I can only give you sort of a general sense of what they look like on the base. They look okay. It gives a little bit of background, and if I include that insert in the back, which I'll do right now, you can see you get like a little bit more context to their battle. Like, it looks okay, doesn't it? Like, as a display piece, it's pretty good. It gives you a sort of sense of Batman and Superman fighting in the Batcave. It serves its purpose. I can't complain too much. So as an overall package, this is sort of what you're looking at. And if you can imagine someone with more skill posing them better than this, you could see that it'd be quite a cool display. So that is nice. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these figures individually because boy, is there a lot to talk about with these figures. So let's get into it, starting with Batman. So let's start with Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis. Now, there's a lot to say about this figure. Right off the bat, I think the design is good. I really like the kryptonite laced suit. I think it's really striking with these big, amazing looking wings. Really, really cool. But let's get the elephant out of the room. This is a figure we have largely seen before. It is the same as the original Batman Beyond figure in just about every single way. As far as I can tell, the only new parts on this Batman are the wings, which are obviously a unique sculpt, and the head, which is similar but very, very different in terms of the facial expression. This has kind of got a closed mouth stoic, expression, and the new one has sort of a gritted teeth expression. And I think it's a pretty good head sculpt, but really in this 2-pack, we're getting a re-release of now almost a 3-year-old figure, 2.5 years old from memory. And there's some drawbacks to that. So I'll put this figure aside, which is a really cool figure for its time. But this figure here is essentially, an early McFarlane figure in every way that counts. The articulation, it's exactly the same. I'm not going to run through the articulation. We've seen it before, but I will point out, in terms of the sculpt, we've gone back to these hideous ball joint ankles. Now, 2 years down the line, I'm shocked that McFarlane hasn't bothered to update the sculpt. I mean, this was an opportunity to give us an updated Batman Beyond batsuit with all the bells and whistles that McFarlane has sort of become known for in the last couple of years, sculpted ball joints. I'm just saddened that it's we're just stuck with this old figure, and it feels old. Like when I touch it, the articulation feels like stiff, and it's fine, like it's functional, it's decent, but there's nothing exciting about it, and it doesn't feel cutting edge, it doesn't feel new, it feels repetitive, and that's really disappointing for a 2-pack, in my opinion, where I would expect one figure to be completely new, and you'll figure out as this review goes on, there's nothing really new in this 2-pack. But anyway, let's focus on the positives. These wings are really cool, they're a great looking sculpt. They're quite thin, quite flimsy. You'll see how they attach at the back here. They both sort of fit into this port here. One is slightly raised above the other, which gives my OCD, some problems, but it is what it is. They work pretty well. And in terms of articulation, they they rotate up and down. You can move them together or you can pose them independently, which I quite like. You remember in the Blue Beetle figure, if you watch my review of that, the wings are sort of fixed. And I didn't like that. Here, the wings give you sort of a broad range of like poses, which I really like. So that's good. So really what you're paying for here is the old sculpt with a new head, some new wings, and a new paint job. And in terms of the paint job, I don't know. Let's start down here. So at the boots, you'll see that there's some green lines applied, and the paint just isn't quite thick enough to cover the black, so it looks a bit thin in some points, especially here on the leg. Do you see that? Do you see that paint line? Just here, it really looks like it could have used another coat. It's sloppy, it's a bit thin, it looks cheap. It looks like someone's gotten a green pen and tried to do this. The stripes on the gauntlets just look a little bit muddy. On the torso as well. I think the only place where the paint really, really works well is on the Bat logo. I think that's just really bright, really clean. It looks vibrant and good. And I just wish that the paint had been a little bit more judiciously applied and a bit more carefully applied. I really would have liked if these green lines had actually been sculpted into the suit. That would have required an all new sculpt, but I think that would have merited it. It's an important enough character that they could issue a new sculpt for Terry McGinnis, in my opinion. In terms of the head, it looks pretty good. I like the paint in terms of the design. I like how it's been applied, but again, it's a little thin. And something that I've never seen before on a McFarlane figure, well, there's a couple of things here. It's come out of the mold really dirty. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but there's a grittiness to the plastic here. Like it's come out of the mold a bit hot, and the plastic hasn't set. Can you see how coarse it is on his ears? Yeah, it's messy. Like the plastic is messy, which you don't see, and it's really amateurish looking. I mean, look at that. Look at that along the ear. That messiness. Like it's just it's come out of the mold really, really messy. And I don't know if that's an issue on all the figures or just mine, but it makes him have a really messy looking head sculpt, and I don't like that, particularly when you compare it to the original, which is super clean. So it might just be a QC issue on mine. Another thing worth noting is that my figure came out of the packaging like oily. You can kind of see it on the wings here, that there's like an oily residue. I've kind of wiped a lot of it away, but he looks like he's been, rubbed with oil. It's because he was oily. He had like streaks of oil on his face that I had to sort of rub away with my fingers, and just really weird. Like it feels like he came out of the oven half baked. I don't know. This figure, it's a really hard one because the design rocks. Like for Terry McGinnis, this is a really cool look. I like the wings. It looks like quite striking. And I think it's like a really cool piece on the shelf from a distance, but it's rough. Like it's old and rough and basic and repetitive, and I just expect more. I could excuse how sort of sloppy this figure is, or if the other figure sort of was brand new and like went all out in the sculpt, you know, I could accept that maybe we're getting something new and something old, and that sort of balances it out. But as you'll see when we get to the Superman, there's a lot of repetition and reuse there too. So let's get to the Superman and you'll see what I'm talking about. So bringing in Justice Lord Superman, here he is. Now, again, this is an awesome design for Superman, in my opinion. I really love this sort of striking black, red, and white suit. I think it's a great look for the character. I think you'll all agree. He looks really, really cool. But you've all noticed it by now. This is the infected Superman body buck yet again. We've seen it a million times. And there are some problems with it. Like, it's cool in some ways, but in other ways, it's really weird. Like, his legs look really, really short and really, really thin, and he's just really top heavy. You know, it's a really weird look. Yeah, it's a really weird look. This is essentially the Eradicator figure. So let's have a look. Eradicator used the same buck. And in every way that counts, this is the same. You'll see that the diaper piece is exactly the same, just with a different paint job. The hands are the same, just with a different paint job. And the head is different. So we're getting a new head. That's it. So this figure comes with a new head, the same cape, the same everything. So we are paying for a new head, essentially. The good news is that the head looks really good. Like, it's well painted, well sculpted. It really looks like an evil bastard Superman. It's kind of an older Superman. I do think that the head sits a little bit low on the neck, and that's because the peg's a little bit short. Now, if you go check out the Instagram of my good friend Pack Photos, he has shown on his Instagram how he replaced the neck peg on this figure to actually sort of give Superman a bit of a longer neck, makes the neck's head sit a bit higher, and it sort of lets his face look a little bit less puffy. His head looks a bit thinner, a little bit more in proportion. So if you want to see how Pac's done that, go check out his Instagram. But, you know, it's probably a worthwhile modification if this head is looking a little bit pudgy and sitting a bit low down. Now, this is one of those figures that, like Batman, it's kind of, he looks good on the shelf from a distance, like it's quite striking. But as soon as you get up close, you see the corners cut, and it's like really disappointing. So let's look at the legs. You will see here that we have the sculpt of the boots, which have just been painted over with white stripes. Now, from a distance, you're not going to really notice, but up close, oof. That's just shocking. Like, this is the stuff that Hasbro does with Marvel Legends all the time, just slapping a few bits of paint on an old buck. The difference with Legends is that their bucks are so generic that they don't actually have these sculpted details in here, so you don't actually get this awkward thing where a sculpt has just been painted over. I hate this. I would rather a generic leg than a sculpted leg with paint over it. Like, just don't, you know, you're either going to have a buck that's generic enough for reuse, or you're going to have a sculpted, unique body part. And I don't think you can do both. I don't think you can have sculpted parts that you then just reuse willy-nilly with a bit of paint. I think that's really unacceptable. We've seen it a lot with McFarlane this year, and I'm just a bit sad, but like, I just don't know why he couldn't sculpt some new lower legs, or just use some other lower legs that are in his inventory. Like, yeah, it's beyond me. This ain't it. This ain't it. I would have rather that he'd actually painted that sculpt like white, and just, it would have been different from the character design, but it wouldn't have looked so lazy, which this just reeks of laziness. And so the diaper is the same as Eradicator, you can see, but there's no sculpted detail for this belt. It's just like painted on. The paint is really clean, but it's so like cheap looking. I don't know, and it just makes me sad, like, because this is a really cool design, and we could have used a really cool top to bottom new figure, I think, for Justice Lord Superman, in my opinion. On the positives, I think the Superman symbol is painted really nicely. The red and the white really, really pop. The cape, I thought it was a good cape with Eradicator. I think it's a good cape now. It's a really soft. Obviously, it's like very dynamic and like sort of artistically posed. Some people will hate that, especially photographers who want to get some unique poses. Like, they're limited by sort of what this cape is, and I know people will hate it, but I quite like it. It gives some real shelf presence. On On the downside, you'll see that this section here where the neck meets the chest, in the white, you can see these sort of seam lines where it's all being glued together, and it looks terrible. You didn't have that with Eradicator because it was all black. So you didn't really see any of this, but of course now that this is white, it all just looks cobbled together and horrible. Not a big problem if you're staring at him head on. And so it's really just one of those figures that from a distance, you're like, yeah, he's pretty cool. And then you get closer and it's like, oh my God, this is just so lazy. So yeah, what can I say? It's kind of mixed. Like this is cool and I like to have him, and if they release the other Justice Lords, I'll get those and they'll look really awesome posed together in my display. But this could have and should have been better. So anyway, that is what it is, I guess. Let's do some comparisons. So, starting off with Batman, here he is alongside the original Batman Beyond, and alongside the unmasked Batwoman Beyond, and alongside Blight, and alongside Shriek. Now this is one of the great underrated figures in the McFarlane line. This figure rocks and no one ever talks about it, and it's never held up as one of the greats, but like it's an early figure in the line and it's kind of incredible. So if you've been sleeping on Shriek, get him because he's so cool. But anyway, let's go and have a look at some Superman comparisons. So for Justice Lord Superman, let's compare him to Eradicator, who you'll see is basically identical in every way except their head, and Ultraman from the Starro Build-A-Figure wave. Notice here how these both have the same infected body buck, but Ultraman is given the benefit of a unique sculpt and paint job for his boots. So McFarlane can mix and match elements when they want to, but they haven't gone the full way here, whereas they kind of made a lot more effort with Ultraman. And here he is alongside the Action Comics #1 or Superman #1, because this is the Platinum variant Superman. You'll see they both share the same buck and the boots are the same, and obviously Action Comics or Superman Comics #1, his boots look a lot better because the sculpt matches the paint. And finally, here he is alongside Action Comics 1000 Superman. This is the original Superman that McFarlane released, although this is a later reissue in a different, newer, brighter colour scheme in the Atomic Skull 2-pack. I still think this body is the best Superman body that we've ever got. Much better proportionately than this one, although I kind of do see why they went with the infected buck for Justice Lord Superman, because he's an older, more heavyset Superman. So look, it's questionable which body they should have used. I think it was the right choice. Ultimately, I think the best choice would have been a brand new sculpt. But there we are. So what do I think of this Batman Beyond vs Justice Lord Superman 2-pack? Well, I think it's a really cool 2-pack in concept. I think both designs for these characters are awesome. It's a great pair of characters to pit against each other in a 2-pack, but I think the execution is a little bit lacking. Batman Beyond is a really cool design, but it's a shame we don't get an updated sculpt. The head is cool, the wings are cool, but that body is old and we've seen it before, and the paint is maybe not as good as it could have been. In terms of Superman, again, an awesome design and one that I'm glad to add to the collection, but it's using that same old buck, and worse than that, there's been no accommodation for the sculpt. So the paint and the sculpt are just mismatched, it's lazily applied, and I feel like more work and effort could have gone into this character to give him the sort of treatment he deserves. However, I do like the background and the base. I think the range of accessories, including the alternate hands and batarangs, is pretty good. So overall, it's a decent 2-pack. I'm glad to have it in my collection, but deep down, I'm kind of disappointed that just a little bit more effort wasn't put into this, because I think it really could have sung and been something special with just a little bit more budget and TLC. Anyway, that's all from me. If you've liked this video, give me a like and subscribe. Until next time, happy collecting, and thank you so much for watching.